The sensor array beeped 3 times before anyone noticed. Deep in the observation room of the Torrent Imperial Command Station, a young technician named Ven stared at his screen with growing confusion. The readings made no sense. Something massive was moving through the outer sectors, but the computer kept changing its estimate of size and speed. "Senior Officer Drask," Ven called across the dimly lit chamber, "I need you to verify something." Drask approached with the practiced slowness of someone who had seen 30 years of mostly nothing happening. He glanced at Ven's display and frowned. "Run the diagnostic again. Your equipment is malfunctioning." "I already ran it twice. The array is functioning perfectly. Whatever this is, it's real." Drask leaned closer. The signature on the screen pulsed with energy readings that climbed higher every few seconds. "How far out?" "Frontier Sector 9, maybe 4 light-years from the boundary markers." "That's quarantine space," Drask straightened. "Nothing should be out there except monitoring drones." "The drones went silent 6 months ago. We assumed equipment failure." "Everyone assumes equipment failure in that sector." Drask tapped commands into the console. "Let me pull up the historical data." The screen filled with reports dating back 300 years. Sector 9 had been marked as restricted territory after the Empire's first contact with a species called humans. The records were sparse: primitive faster-than-light capability, aggressive tendencies, technological development insufficient for galactic society, standard quarantine protocols established. Empire moves on to more important matters. "When was the last physical survey of that region?" Ven asked. Drask scrolled through files. 70 years ago, the team never reported back. Command assumed the humans destroyed them, reinforced the quarantine, and forgot about it. "Sir, this energy signature is unlike anything in our database. It's not matching any known Empire vessel classification." "Could be a natural phenomenon. Space is full of strange readings." "Natural phenomena don't maintain steady courses. This thing is moving with purpose, and it's heading toward Imperial space." Drask felt a cold sensation in his chest. 30 years of routine had not prepared him for actual anomalies. "Alert Admiral Kren. Classify this as Code Yellow until we know more." Within the hour, Admiral Kren stood in the command center, studying the same readings that had puzzled Ven. Kren had commanded fleets for 40 years. He had seen pirates, rebels, and the occasional territorial dispute with other empires. Nothing had ever truly worried him. The Empire was too powerful, too advanced, too certain of its superiority. "How confident are we in these numbers?" Kren asked. 80% confidence on location and trajectory, 20% on size and composition. The object seems to absorb our sensor sweeps," Ven explained. "Absorb them?" "Yes, sir. Most ships reflect sensor energy back to us. This thing drinks it in. We're only getting partial returns." Kren studied the projected path. The unknown vessel would cross into Imperial territory within 3 days if it maintained current speed. "Dispatch Survey Fleet Delta. 3 cruisers should be sufficient for investigation. Captain Harris will lead." "Should we consider this hostile, sir?" "Consider it unknown. Harris has orders to identify, communicate, and report, nothing more. If it's the humans, they're still bound by quarantine. If it's something else, we need to know what." 2 days later, Survey Fleet Delta reached intercept coordinates. Captain Harris watched his main display as the unknown vessel finally appeared on visual sensors. For a long moment, he simply stared. The ship was enormous. Not the largest he'd ever seen, but something about its proportions seemed wrong. The hull was dark, almost black, with smooth curves that made it look organic rather than constructed. No visible weapons ports, no obvious propulsion systems, no running lights or identifying marks except for a small designation near what might be the bow. "Can you enhance that marking?" Harris asked his sensor officer. The image zoomed in. Letters appeared in a script that the computer took several seconds to translate. "Terran Defense Force Prototype Shepard." "Terran," Harris whispered. "That's the human designation." Sir, that can't be right. The humans were confined to primitive chemical rockets and early warp drives. This vessel is showing power outputs that exceed our own dreadnoughts. I can see the readings, Lieutenant. Hail them. The communication officer sent standard Imperial greeting protocols across all frequencies. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then a voice responded in perfectly clear Imperial standard language. Imperial Survey Fleet Delta, this is TDF Shepard. We receive your hail. How can we assist you today? The casual friendliness of the tone caught Harris off guard. Unknown vessel Shepard, you are operating in restricted space under Imperial quarantine protocols. Identify your origin and purpose. Our origin is Earth, Sol system. Our purpose is peaceful exploration and cultural exchange. We're currently mapping this region and documenting spatial phenomena. You claim to be human. That's correct. Is there a problem, Captain? Harris felt the situation slipping beyond his training. The human species is confined to their home system by Imperial decree. Your presence here violates established quarantine. A pause, then the human voice responded with what sounded like genuine confusion. Captain, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The quarantine agreement was mutually dissolved 75 years ago through proper diplomatic channels. We have the signed documentation if you need to verify. Imperial records show no such agreement. That's unfortunate. We sent the documentation through standard Imperial communication networks. Perhaps it was lost in your bureaucratic processes. These things happen. Harris signaled his weapons officer to ready systems, keeping the gesture off-screen. Shepard, you will halt your vessel and prepare for inspection. This is not a request. Captain Harris, we respectfully decline. We're on a time-sensitive mission and cannot delay for administrative complications. We'd be happy to provide all necessary documentation electronically. If you do not comply, we are authorized to use force. Another pause. When the human spoke again, the friendly tone remained, but something underneath had shifted. Captain, we strongly advise against hostile action. We have no desire for conflict. Then halt your vessel. We cannot do that. Harris made the decision. All ships fire warning shots across their bow. 3 Imperial cruisers discharged energy weapons in a coordinated spread. The bolts of concentrated power streaked across space toward the dark hull of Shepard. Harris expected the humans to panic, to swerve, to respond with fear. Instead, a shimmer of blue-white energy materialized around the human ship. The Imperial weapons struck the barrier and simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no scatter, no residual energy. The attacks vanished as though they had never been fired. Shepard continued on its course without even slowing down. Sir, his sensor officer said quietly, their shields didn't just absorb our weapons. The energy readings show they neutralized them at a quantum level. I've never seen anything like it. Harris stared at the human vessel as it glided past his fleet like they were nothing more than debris. Get me Admiral Kren, immediately, and someone pull every file we have on human technological development. In the silence that followed, Shepard's communication channel remained open. The human voice spoke once more, calm and almost apologetic. Captain, we're requesting permission to dock at Torrance Station for diplomatic discussions. We believe it's time our peoples had a proper conversation. We'll be there in 6 hours. Shepard out. The channel closed. Harris watched the impossible ship accelerate away, leaving his fleet behind like they were standing still. Something had changed in the galaxy. He just didn't know what yet. Teller had always loved the quiet of the Imperial archives. While other historians fought for prestigious positions studying recent wars or economic treaties, he preferred the forgotten corners where dust gathered on data crystals nobody had accessed in centuries. That was where the interesting stories lived. Today he was deep in sector classifications, cross-referencing quarantine zones with missing survey teams. The pattern had caught his attention 3 weeks ago during routine cataloging. 15 expeditions sent to various restricted zones over the past 300 years. 14 had returned safely. Only one sector showed a complete loss rate. Sector 9, the Human Quarantine Zone. 6 survey teams dispatched over 200 years. 0 returned. The official reports listed them as destroyed by hostile indigenous forces. Case closed. Sector reinforced. Move along. Teller pulled up the last transmission from Survey Team Kappa, sent 120 years ago. The message log was corrupted, but he managed to recover fragments. Unexpected welcome. Humans offering technology exchange. Their medical facilities are remarkable. Requesting extended stay for cultural documentation. Commander Yolen believes this species was severely underestimated. The log ended there. According to official records, Team Kappa was lost with all hands 3 days later, except the dates didn't. Teller checked the timestamp again. The final transmission showed as 5 months after the team was declared destroyed. Someone had changed the records. He was about to dig deeper when his supervisor entered the archive chamber. Director Pell was old even by imperial standards, with scales that had faded to gray and eyes that missed nothing. "You've been spending considerable time in the quarantine files," Pell said. "Just routine organization, Director." Routine organization doesn't require accessing encrypted military logs. Teller hesitated. "I found inconsistencies, survey teams that might not actually be dead." "Leave it alone." "But if Imperial citizens are alive out there?" "I said leave it alone." Pell's voice carried weight earned from 50 years of archival work. "Some files are sealed for good reasons. The humans are contained. That's all that matters." Except they weren't contained anymore. Even as Pell spoke, emergency alerts began flashing across every screen in the archive. "Priority override. All personnel report to information stations." Code Amber declared. Teller pulled up the alert details. An unknown vessel had entered Imperial space. Origin, human territory. Current location, approaching Torinth. Threat level, undetermined. "That's impossible," Pell whispered. "The humans don't have ships capable of reaching the core worlds." Maybe we were wrong about their capabilities. Above them, in the command levels of Torinth Station, Admiral Kren convened an emergency session of High Command. 12 senior officers gathered around a holographic display showing Shepard's approach vector. The human ship would arrive in 4 hours. "We should destroy it now while we have numerical advantage," War Minister Grath argued. "One vessel against our entire defense fleet." "We tried engaging it," Kren replied. "Captain Harris fired on it. The weapons had no effect whatsoever. Their shielding technology is beyond anything in our arsenal." "Then we use bigger weapons. The orbital platforms carry plasma cannons that can crack a moon. And if those don't work either, we'll have demonstrated our full capabilities while learning nothing about theirs. I suggest we hear what they have to say." Grath slammed his hand on the table. "We don't negotiate with quarantined species. They violated the restriction. That alone justifies military response. The humans claim the quarantine was dissolved 75 years ago through proper channels. A lie. We have no record of such an agreement. Or we do, and it was buried." All eyes turned to Kren. "I've reviewed the archive inconsistencies. Multiple survey teams went dark in human space. Their final transmissions suggested peaceful contact, not destruction. What if we've been deceived about the true situation? That would require a conspiracy spanning centuries. Or simple bureaucratic incompetence. Either way, I recommend we allow the human vessel to dock, under heavy guard. Let them present their case." Emperor Dalvin had remained silent throughout the debate, his ancient eyes studying the holographic ship rotating before him. Finally, he spoke. "Grant them docking privileges, Bay 12. Seal the surrounding sections, security teams on full alert, but no weapons fire unless they initiate." Grath looked ready to argue, but the Emperor's word was final. 4 hours later, Shepard glided into Torrance Station's largest docking bay. The human vessel was even more impressive up close. Smooth hull plating that seemed to shift colors in the station's lights, energy signatures that made the station's own reactor look primitive, and a design philosophy that suggested both grace and terrible purpose. A boarding ramp extended from Shepard's side. Admiral Kren watched through security cameras as a dozen figures emerged. They wore form-fitting suits that appeared to be both armor and environmental protection. Leading them was a human who stood with relaxed confidence despite being surrounded by armed Imperial guards. "I am Captain Reed of the Terran Defense Force," the human announced. "Thank you for granting us an audience. We brought gifts as a gesture of goodwill." The gifts turned out to be data crystals and 73 Imperial citizens who had supposedly died in human space over the past 2 centuries. They emerged from Shepard looking healthy, younger than their recorded ages, and completely at ease. Kren personally went down to the docking bay. He approached one of the returned citizens at random, an engineer named Taven who had vanished 80 years ago. According to records, Taven would have been dead for decades even if he'd survived the initial survey mission. "You're Taven, engineering specialist Taven from Survey Team Delta." The engineer smiled. "I was, now I'm a consultant for human shield technology. Development, I've been living on Earth for the past 80 years. Earth, you chose to stay with the humans. They offered me a life instead of just existence, real research, collaborative development, no military classifications or corporate secrets, just pure advancement of knowledge." Taven looked around at the station. "This place hasn't changed at all. Same design as when I left. You're still using quantum core reactors, aren't you? They're the most efficient power source available. They were 80 years ago. Humans moved to zero-point energy extraction 40 years back. Clean, unlimited, no radiation. I helped design the systems." Taven's expression softened. "I'm not here to insult you, Admiral. I'm here to show you what's possible when knowledge flows freely." Kren felt something shift in his understanding of the universe. "How many of you chose to stay?" "All of us, every survey team that reached human space. They welcomed us, taught us, gave us choices. Some of us wanted to return home eventually, but we wanted to bring knowledge back with us. The Empire wouldn't listen to our transmissions, so we waited until humanity was ready to make contact themselves. And now they're ready. Now they're ready." Captain Reed approached, carrying one of the data crystals. "Admiral Kren, this contains 300 years of human history, technological development, and cultural evolution. We think it's time the Empire understood who we've become. The High Command will want to interrogate you extensively. We expected that. We're prepared to answer any questions truthfully." Reed glanced back at Shepard. "We're also prepared to demonstrate our capabilities if words aren't sufficient, but we'd prefer diplomacy." "What do you want from us, Captain?" Reed smiled. "We want to be friends. We want to share what we've learned. We want to help the Empire become something better than it is. And we want to explore the galaxy together as equals rather than as conqueror and conquered." Kren looked at this human, this representative of a species the Empire had dismissed as primitive 3 centuries ago. "You realize the Empire hasn't had equals in over 1,000 years. Then maybe it's time that changed." The High Command Chamber had witnessed thousands of debates over the centuries, but never one quite like this. Captain Reed stood before the assembled officers and Emperor Dalvin himself, displaying data from the crystals on floating holographic screens. 300 years of human advancement projected for all to see. War Minister Grath interrupted for the 5th time. "These images could be fabricated. We have only your word that any of this is real." "You're welcome to verify everything independently," Reed replied patiently. "We've included raw sensor data, mathematical proofs, and reproducible experimental procedures for every technology we've developed. And you expect us to believe humanity advanced from primitive rockets to this?" Grath gestured at an image of a massive human shipyard. "In just 3 centuries. Actually, it took us 150 years to reach post-scarcity civilization. The remaining time was spent exploring and meeting other species. The chamber went silent. Admiral Kren leaned forward. Other species, how many? 63 sentient species encountered. 57 joined the Terran Alliance voluntarily. 4 chose peaceful isolation. 2 required demonstrations before agreeing to cooperation. And what happened to those 2? Reed pulled up new images. Battle footage appeared, showing human vessels facing aggressive alien fleets. The Empire's officers watched as Shepard-class ships simply absorbed incoming fire while deploying what looked like gravitational weapons that gently disabled enemy vessels without destroying them. The Vren Collective attacked our scout ship believing we were easy prey. We disabled their weapons, towed them to safety, and offered medical assistance. Took them 3 days to realize we weren't going to retaliate. Now they're one of our closest allies. You didn't destroy them for attacking you. Grath sounded genuinely confused. Why would we? They were operating on incomplete information. Once they understood we weren't a threat, the conflict ended. Fighting would have just wasted lives on both sides. Emperor Dalvin finally spoke. You mentioned post-scarcity civilization. Explain. Reed shifted the display to show cities unlike anything the Empire had constructed. Towers of living crystal growing from the ground. Forests integrated with technology. Orbital platforms that looked like artwork. We developed molecular fabrication, zero-point energy extraction, and quantum computing within our first century of focused research. Once we could create any material we needed and generate unlimited clean power. Scarcity became a choice rather than a condition. Food, shelter, medicine, education, all freely available. No one goes hungry. No one lacks medical care. Everyone has opportunity to pursue their interests. And everyone works for free. Grath's tone dripped with sarcasm. People contribute because they want to, not because they'll starve otherwise. Turns out when basic needs are met, most individuals naturally seek purpose through creation, exploration, or helping others. We have no unemployment because we have no concept of employment, just contribution and community. Kren studied the images carefully. What about governance? How do you prevent chaos without strong central authority? We have authority. It's just distributed. Every community manages its own affairs through direct democracy. Larger issues are decided by consensus building and voting. Leaders are selected for expertise and can be recalled if they fail to serve the people's interests. We use AI to help coordinate and analyze, but humans always make the final decisions. Sounds unstable. It works because everyone's educated from childhood in critical thinking, empathy, and cooperation. When people understand how systems work and have genuine say in their operation, they invest in maintaining them. Reed pulled up statistics. Crime rate across all Terran worlds, 0.003%. Average lifespan, 150 years. Citizen satisfaction rating, 94%. Educational achievement, 99% complete advanced studies. We didn't achieve this through force. We achieved it by making society work for everyone. The data crystals also contained something that made several high command members visibly uncomfortable. Detailed analysis of the Empire's own civilization. Resource distribution maps showing how wealth concentrated in the core worlds while frontier planets struggled. Mortality statistics revealing that average Imperial citizens lived only 60 years compared to the elite's 90. Educational access limited by class and location. Military spending consuming 70% of the total budget, while civilian infrastructure crumbled. You've been spying on us, Grath accused. We've been observing, yes. When you establish quarantine around a species, they tend to pay attention to the civilization doing the quarantining. We've watched the Empire for 3 centuries. We've seen the inefficiencies, the suffering, the waste of potential, and we've wanted to help. Help, Grath stood abruptly. You want to destroy our way of life. We want to improve quality of life for Imperial citizens. There's a difference. Emperor Dalvin raised a hand, silencing Grath. Let's say we believe your intentions are benevolent. What exactly are you proposing? Reed took a breath. A mutual cooperation agreement. We share our medical technology first, extending lifespans and curing diseases across your empire. In exchange, you allow us to establish educational exchange programs. Your citizens study with us, learn our methods, see our civilization firsthand. Then we move to economic cooperation, gradually introducing post-scarcity technology. Finally, political reformation, helping your society transition to representative systems over a 50-year timeline. And if we refuse, then we leave and wish you well. We won't force change on anyone, but we'll also maintain our presence in this region of space. The quarantine is over regardless of your acceptance. We'll continue exploring, meeting other species, building alliances. The Empire can either join that process or watch it happen. Grath moved toward Reed aggressively, but Admiral Kren blocked his path. Stand down, Minister. This human is threatening the Empire. No, he's offering an alternative. There's a difference. Kren turned to Reed. You understand that accepting your offer means admitting the Empire has been wrong about fundamental aspects of civilization. I understand it requires humility, but I also know that every society we've encountered that made this transition became stronger, not weaker. The Vren Collective went from aggressive expansionism to peaceful exploration. Their citizens are happier, their culture flourishes, they don't regret the change. Emperor Dalvin stood, his ancient frame straightening. This council will adjourn to consider your proposal. In the meantime, you and your crew will be provided quarters and full access to non-restricted areas of the station. I want to hear more, particularly from the Imperial citizens who chose to live among you. Your Majesty, this is unprecedented, Grath began. Everything about this situation is unprecedented, Minister, which is precisely why we must approach it carefully. Dalvin looked at Reed. I have one question before we adjourn. Your ship, this Shepherd. What classification of vessel is it? Light Explorer, science and survey platform with defensive capabilities. And if we were to attempt to seize it or harm your crew? Reed's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Shepherd has orders to withdraw peacefully if threatened. However, we have 40 actual warships deployed throughout this region. You wouldn't reach any of them, and they wouldn't need to fire a shot to disable every military installation in this system. A threat, Captain. A fact, Your Majesty. We don't want conflict. We've structured our entire civilization around avoiding it, but we're also not naive. We build peace through strength sufficient to make aggression pointless. Dalvin nodded slowly. At least you're honest. Dismissed. We'll reconvene tomorrow. As the council filed out, Kren approached Reed. That comment about warships was unnecessary. Was it? Your war minister was considering attacking us. I saw it in his body language. Better he understands the futility now rather than after people die. You really could disable this entire system. Reed met his gaze steadily. In approximately 4 minutes, but we won't unless forced. We're here to build bridges, Admiral, not burn them. Kren watched the human leave, escorted by guards who seemed uncertain whether they were protecting him or guarding against him. The galaxy had just become much more complicated and much more interesting. War Minister Grath paced his private quarters like a caged predator. On his desk sat a secure communicator connecting him to 12 other high-ranking officers who shared his views. Traditionalists who believed the Empire's strength came from military dominance and rigid hierarchy. The humans threatened everything they'd built their lives around. The Emperor is actually considering their proposal, Grath said to the assembled faces on his screen. He's going soft in his old age. Admiral Brent, commander of the Third Fleet, scowled. If we accept their terms, we're admitting weakness. The entire Imperial structure will collapse. Worse than that, we'll become dependent on human technology we don't understand. They'll control us through generosity more effectively than we ever controlled conquered worlds through force. So what do you propose? Asked General Wren, head of Planetary Defense Forces. We remove the Emperor from power, temporarily. His own protection, of course. Then we deal with the human vessel before this goes any further. That's treason, someone said quietly. That's preservation. Once Dalvin sees we can destroy these humans despite their fancy shields, he'll understand we were right. The Empire doesn't need friends, we need subjects. Unknown to Grath, Admiral Kren had placed surveillance on every high command member after the council adjourned. Old instincts from his intelligence service days. He listened to the conspiracy unfold from his own quarters, recording everything. He opened a secure channel to an unexpected recipient. "Captain Reed, this is Admiral Kren. We need to talk, privately." 10 minutes later, Kren met Reed in an observation lounge overlooking the docking bay where Shepard rested. The human arrived without escort, apparently unconcerned about potential danger. "You know about the coup," Reed said, not a question. "How did you?" "Your station's communication security is approximately 300 years behind current standards. We've been monitoring all channels since we arrived. We detected the conspiracy before your surveillance did." Kren felt irritation and respect in equal measure. "And you didn't mention this." "We hoped you'd handle it internally. We're trying not to interfere in Imperial politics." Reed looked out at his ship. "But we also can't allow them to succeed. If Grath takes power, he'll attack us. We'll have to respond. People will die. Everything we're trying to accomplish will fail." "You could stop the coup easily." "Which would prove Grath's point about human interference. We need the Empire to choose cooperation freely, not because we forced compliance." Reed turned to face Kren. "What do you want us to do, Admiral?" The question caught Kren off guard. "You're asking my permission. You're the only high command member who seems to genuinely care about truth over politics. So yes, we can stop Grath's forces without firing a shot, but only if you authorize it. This needs to be an Imperial decision, not a human imposition." Kren looked at this strange being who possessed overwhelming power yet sought permission to use it. Every instinct said humans should be terrifying. Instead, they were merely confusing. Stop them, minimize casualties. Make it clear the Empire still has sovereignty. You're just preventing internal violence. Reed nodded, understood, and, "Admiral, you might want to evacuate the Emperor from his quarters. Grath's forces will move in approximately 30 minutes. "How do you know the timing?" "We've been tracking their communications and troop movements. We're good at preventing conflicts before they start." 28 minutes later, Grath's loyalist soldiers stormed the Imperial chambers. They found them empty except for Admiral Kren and a full security detail loyal to the Emperor. Grath himself arrived moments later, his face darkening when he saw Kren. "Where is he?" "Somewhere safe, and you're under arrest for treason and conspiracy." "You can't prove anything." Kren played the recorded communications. Grath's own voice filled the chamber, outlining plans for the coup and attack on Shepard. The war minister's expression shifted from defiance to calculation. "It doesn't matter. My forces already have orders to attack the human ship. Even if you arrest me, the assault will proceed. Their precious shields won't stop a coordinated strike from 50 vessels with plasma cannons." "Actually," a new voice said from the doorway. Captain Reed entered, calm as always. "Your forces are currently experiencing technical difficulties." Grath grabbed for his communicator. The screen showed his fleet commanders reporting the same problem. Weapons systems offline, engines disabled, ships floating dead in space. No damage, no explosions, just total systems failure across 50 warships simultaneously. "What did you do?" Grath demanded. "Targeted electromagnetic pulse precisely calibrated to your ship systems. No permanent damage. Crews are perfectly safe, but your vessels won't be firing on anyone today or tomorrow. Repairs will take about a week." "You attacked Imperial forces." "We disabled ships that were about to attack us. That's called self-defense. And before you call for backup, the orbital platforms are also experiencing temporary malfunctions. Very localized, very specific, very harmless." Grath lunged at Reed. The human didn't even move. An Imperial guard intercepted the War Minister, forcing him to his knees. Grath struggled against restraints, his face contorted with rage. "You're destroying us, can't you see that? The Empire is built on strength, on the certainty that we're superior to everyone else. If that's proven false, everything collapses." Reed crouched to Grath's eye level. "Your empire is built on a lie, and yes, that lie will collapse, but what replaces it will be better, stronger, just not in the ways you understand strength. You know nothing about strength. I know that real strength is making your enemy irrelevant, not dead. I know that cooperation achieves more than conquest. I know that societies built on fear eventually consume themselves." Reed stood. "You could learn these things, but first you have to be willing to admit you might be wrong." Emperor Dalvin entered the chamber, escorted by loyal guards. He looked older than before, wearier. "Thank you, Captain Reed, for both the warning and your restraint." "I'm sorry we had to intervene, Your Majesty." "Don't be, you saved lives, both human and Imperial." Dalvin looked at Grath with something like pity. "Take him to detention, he'll face trial for treason." As guards hauled Grath away, the former War Minister shouted back at Reed. "This isn't over. There are thousands who think like me, millions across the Empire who will never accept you." "I know," Reed replied quietly. "That's why we're not forcing anything. Change takes time, understanding takes patience. We have plenty of both." After Grath was gone, Dalvin sat heavily in his throne. "That demonstration of your capabilities will terrify the Council." "That was the point. Better they fear our capabilities and choose peace than underestimate us and choose war. You disabled 50 warships and 12 orbital platforms in what, 4 minutes? 4.3 minutes, we wanted to be thorough. And you did this from Shepard alone." Reed smiled. "Shepard and 3 support vessels you haven't detected yet. They're in stealth positions throughout the system. Standard security protocol when entering unknown territory." Kren, listening to this exchange, felt the galaxy shift again. "How many ships do you actually have in this region?" "Enough. The exact number isn't important. What matters is that we're here to help, not conquer. Today's intervention was necessary to prevent bloodshed, but we won't make a habit of interfering in Imperial governance." Dalvin studied the human carefully. "You could have seized control. With that kind of technology, you could rule the Empire effortlessly." "We don't want to rule you, Your Majesty. We want you to rule yourselves. Better, more fairly, more sustainably. We want to be partners, not masters. And if we refuse partnership, then we'll be neighbors instead. Friendly ones, we hope, but neighbors nonetheless. The choice is yours, it always has been." The Emperor was quiet for a long moment. Then he made a decision that would reshape the galaxy. "I'm authorizing a referendum. Every Imperial citizen will vote on whether to accept your cooperation agreement, not just the elite. Everyone, let the people decide their own future." Reed's smile widened. "That's the most human thing I've heard an emperor say. I think there's hope for us yet." The Imperial Broadcasting Network had never attempted anything like this. A live transmission reaching every world, station, and vessel in the Empire simultaneously. 8,000 worlds, 300 billion citizens, all watching as 73 returned Imperial citizens prepared to share their experiences living among humans. Tavan stepped forward first. The engineer looked 40 despite being 127 years old. He'd volunteered to speak because he remembered what Imperial life was like before meeting humans. The constant struggle, the rigid hierarchies, the knowledge that he'd work until he died, contributing to projects he'd never see completed, benefits he'd never enjoy. "My name is Tavan. I was declared dead 80 years ago after my survey team entered human space. The truth is I chose to stay." He paused, letting that settle. "I want to explain why." He described his first days on Earth, the shock of seeing cities where poverty didn't exist, hospitals that turned no one away, universities that charged no tuition, research facilities where scientists shared discoveries instead of hoarding them for profit or military advantage. I asked my human guide how they prevented people from being lazy if everything was free. She laughed and showed me public project boards, thousands of initiatives needing volunteers, ecological restoration, space exploration, medical research, art programs, educational development. People were competing for opportunities to contribute, not to survive. Tavan pulled up holographic images from his own projects. Shield generators that made Shepard's defenses possible. Engines that bent space more efficiently than anything the Empire had built. Medical scanners that diagnosed illness before symptoms appeared. I helped design these systems. Me, a mid-level Imperial engineer who would have spent my life maintaining old equipment on forgotten stations. Humans saw my potential and gave me resources to explore it. No corporate ownership, no military classification, just pure research for the benefit of everyone. He looked directly into the camera. Some of you are thinking this sounds too good to be true, that there must be a catch. I thought the same thing for my first year there. I kept waiting for the exploitation to start. It never did. Humans actually meant what they said about cooperation and shared prosperity. The next speaker was Myrle, the xenobiologist. She was younger, having joined humans only 60 years ago. Her specialty had been categorizing alien species for potential resource extraction. With humans, she discovered a completely different approach to xenobiology. I've helped discover and study 14 new sentient species while working with Terran research teams. Not one was cataloged for exploitation. Every first contact followed the same protocol: observe, understand, communicate, offer friendship. Some species wanted technology, others wanted isolation, others wanted cultural exchange. The humans respected every choice. She described the Quen, a crystalline species living in gas giants. The Empire would have classified them as non-valuable due to incompatible biology. Humans spent 20 years learning to communicate through harmonic resonance, eventually forming a rich friendship. The Quen taught humans advanced mathematics. Humans taught the Quen about biological life. Both species grew from the exchange. That's what I learned from humans. Intelligence comes in forms we might not recognize. Value exists beyond economic extraction, and understanding different perspectives makes us smarter, not weaker. Soldier Garrick spoke third. His testimony was harder to hear. He described attacking a human survey vessel 45 years ago while serving as an Imperial Marine. His orders were to prevent human expansion. Standard military operation. Destroy the ship, eliminate witnesses, maintain the quarantine. The human vessel didn't even return fire. They disabled our weapons with some kind of field we couldn't penetrate. Then they did something I didn't expect. They hailed us, asked if we needed medical assistance, offered to repair our damaged systems. Garrick's voice roughened. I just tried to kill them. They offered to help us. I didn't understand. My commander ordered us to board their ship since we couldn't. Destroy it. We thought we'd capture it and learn their technology. He paused, remembering. We boarded. They didn't resist, just asked us calmly what we hoped to accomplish. My commander demanded their surrender. The human captain asked why we were fighting, what cause we served, what we thought we'd gain from conflict. Garrick had never questioned orders before. Questioning was for officers, not soldiers, but something about the human captain's genuine curiosity made him think. What was he fighting for? He couldn't answer. The captain offered us a choice. Return to our ship with detailed specifications of their technology as a gift, or stay and learn how they built a civilization without enemies. 3 of us stayed, including me. He described his rehabilitation. Therapy for trauma he didn't know he had. Education about conflict resolution, sociology, psychology. Training in skills he chose based on interest rather than military need. He became a teacher, showing other species how to avoid the cycles of violence he'd spent years perpetuating. I thought strength meant the ability to destroy enemies. Humans taught me real strength is making enemies obsolete, not through domination, through understanding. The testimonies continued for hours. Scientists, engineers, artists, administrators, even former military officers. all sharing variations of the same story. Lives transformed by encountering a civilization built on fundamentally different principles. Between testimonies, Captain Reed provided context. He explained how humanity had developed these principles not from some inherent superiority, but from learning through failure. Humans had nearly destroyed themselves multiple times. Wars, environmental collapse, social breakdown, nuclear weapons that brought them to extinction's edge. "We learned from our mistakes," Reed said. "We realized competition for scarce resources drove most conflicts, so we eliminated scarcity. We realized ignorance and fear created hatred, so we prioritized education and cultural exchange. We realized concentrated power corrupted leaders, so we distributed power among all citizens." He pulled up statistics comparing human and imperial societies. The numbers were stark. Lifespan, happiness, educational achievement, scientific advancement, health outcomes, environmental sustainability. Humans exceeded the empire across every measured category. "We're not sharing this to shame you, we're sharing it to show what's possible. Every challenge you face, we've faced. Every problem you struggle with, we've solved. Not because we're better than you, but because we had 300 years of focused effort while you were busy maintaining an empire." Reed's expression softened. "We want to help because we remember what it was like to struggle. We remember hunger and disease and war. We remember the desperation of feeling trapped in systems that didn't serve us. And we remember how much better life became when we changed those systems." The broadcast concluded with a simple question displayed on every screen. "Do you want to learn from humanity's experiences? Yes or number 3 weeks to vote." Every citizen's voice counted equally, from emperor to farmer, soldier to scientist. Admiral Kren watched the broadcast from his quarters, his communicator filled with messages from officers across the fleet. Some angry, some curious, some desperately hopeful. The empire was fracturing along philosophical lines. "It's going to be close," he said to himself. On Shepard, Captain Reed thought the same thing. They'd presented their best case, offered genuine friendship, demonstrated both capability and restraint. Now it came down to whether 8,000 worlds could overcome centuries of conditioning to embrace something radically different. The vote began. The galaxy held its breath. The 3 weeks felt like 3 years. Across the empire, debate raged in homes, workplaces, military barracks, and government chambers. Arguments flared between generations, between classes, between those comfortable with the status quo and those desperate for change. On the frontier worlds, the vote was overwhelming. 78% in favor. These were citizens who'd seen the empire's resources go to core world luxuries while they struggled with inadequate infrastructure. They had everything to gain and nothing to lose. The core world split more evenly, 62% in favor. Comfortable citizens worried about destabilization, but even there, younger generations pushed toward cooperation. They'd seen the broadcasts, compared their lives to what humans offered, realized they were settling for less than what was possible. The military presented the biggest surprise, 54% in favor. Many soldiers realized they'd been fighting to maintain systems that didn't serve them. Officers saw opportunity in technology that could protect without killing. Veterans recognized exhaustion in endless conflicts that accomplished nothing. When the final count came in, Emperor Dalvin stood before the Imperial Assembly to announce results that would reshape civilization. 78% of Imperial citizens voted in favor of cooperation with humanity, the largest democratic participation in Imperial history, the clearest mandate for change ever recorded. War Minister Grath, awaiting trial and detention, watched the announcement with barely contained fury. 22% had voted no, millions of citizens who agreed with his vision of imperial supremacy. He wasn't done fighting, not by far. But that was a problem for another day. Today belonged to hope. Captain Reed stood beside Emperor Dalvin as they signed the Terran Imperial Cooperation Agreement. The ceremony was broadcast live across both civilizations. Humans watching from Earth cheered at their government's successful diplomatic mission. Imperial citizens watching from 8,000 worlds saw their emperor shake hands with an alien who'd proven both friendship and formidable strength. "We begin with medicine," Dalvin announced. "Human medical teams will be distributed to every world within 6 months, priority given to critical care and life extension treatments." The impact was immediate. Within days, human ships arrived carrying medical equipment and personnel. They set up treatment centers that were free to anyone who needed them. Diseases that had plagued the Empire for centuries were cured in hours. Injuries that would have been crippling were healed completely. Lifespans began extending as cellular regeneration technology reversed aging damage. Teller, the archivist who'd first discovered the inconsistencies in quarantine records, volunteered for life extension treatment. He was 86 and had expected maybe 10 more years. Human doctors told him he could reasonably expect another 90 if he wanted them. He chose to undergo the procedure and spent his recovery learning human archival methods. "You preserve everything," he said to his human instructor. "Every document, every communication, every decision. Nothing hidden, nothing classified beyond reasonable security periods." "Transparency prevents corruption," the human explained. "If citizens can see what their government does, they can hold it accountable. Secrecy is where democracy goes to die." Education exchanges followed medicine. 50,000 Imperial students selected by lottery to attend human universities. They returned transformed, carrying knowledge that spread through Imperial society like fire through dry grass. Engineering students brought advanced manufacturing techniques. Agricultural students brought food synthesis technology. Political students brought models for representative governance. The economic transformation took longer but was equally profound. Humans helped the Empire establish molecular fabrication facilities on every world. Once citizens could create any material good they needed, market economies began shifting. Why buy food when you could fabricate it? Why sell labor when basic needs were guaranteed? The transition was messy. Markets collapsed. Wealth hoarding became pointless. The old economic elite lost power as post-scarcity spread. Some adapted, finding new purpose in creative or intellectual pursuits. Others fought desperately to preserve systems that no longer made sense. Admiral Kren took a position as first Imperial officer in the Terran Defense Force exchange program. He spent 6 months aboard Shepard's sister ship Discovery, learning how humans approached military service without militarism. What he saw astounded him. "Your soldiers are scholars," he told the ship's captain. "They study xenobiology, linguistics, cultural anthropology. They're trained for first contact, not first strike." "We learned that making friends is more valuable than making examples," the captain replied. "Exploration and understanding prevent more conflicts than weapons ever could. Our military exists to protect, not project power." Kren studied their training methods: conflict de-escalation, non-lethal intervention, diplomatic protocols, emergency response, search and rescue, disaster relief, everything designed around preservation of life and peaceful resolution. Yet they maintained overwhelming defensive capability, ensuring no one would mistake pacifism for weakness. "You've turned warfare into peacekeeping," Kren observed. "We turned warriors into guardians. Different purpose, different methods, better outcomes." 1 year after the agreement signing, Emperor Dalvin addressed the Empire again. His appearance had changed dramatically. Life extension treatment had restored decades of aging damage. He looked 60 instead of 130, but the real change was in his demeanor, less weary, more hopeful. "1 year ago, we faced a choice. Continue as we were or risk everything on an uncertain partnership. You chose courage over fear, change over stagnation. The results speak for themselves." Statistics scrolled across screens. Average lifespan, 95 years up from 60. Poverty rate, 12% down from 40. Educational achievement, 78% advanced studies up from 30. Crime rate, 6% down from 12. Citizen satisfaction, 82% up from 41. We're not finished. 50 years of gradual change still ahead. Political reformation, complete economic transition, cultural evolution. But we've proven cooperation works. We've proven different civilizations can learn from each other. We've proven the future can be better than the past. Captain Reed prepared Shepard for departure. His mission to the Empire was complete. Other human vessels would continue the cooperation programs, but Shepard was needed elsewhere. New sectors to explore, new species to meet, new friendships to forge. Admiral Kren came to see him off. You changed everything, you know that, right? We offered possibilities. Your people did the changing. Where will you go next? Reed smiled. Sensors detected something interesting 3 sectors east. Energy signatures that don't match known species. Could be natural phenomena, could be another civilization. Either way, worth investigating. Another first contact. Hopefully another friendship. We've gotten pretty good at those. They shook hands, warrior and guardian, imperial and human, friends across the gap that had once divided their peoples. Shepard departed Torrance Station, surrounded by an honor guard of 100 Imperial vessels. The formation escorted the human ship to the system's edge, then peeled away in a ceremonial salute. Reed watched them go, feeling satisfaction at a mission accomplished. His science officer called from the sensor station. Captain, I'm getting clearer readings on that anomaly. Definitely artificial, definitely advanced, definitely not human or Imperial. New friends to make, Reed said. Set course, standard first contact protocols, and someone start learning their language from radio emissions. I want to say hello properly when we arrive. Shepard jumped to faster-than-light speed, disappearing toward the next adventure. Behind them, the Empire continued transforming. Ahead, unknown species waited to be discovered. The galaxy was vast. Cooperation was spreading. Humanity's journey of turning strangers into friends continued. And somewhere in Imperial space, in a detention facility on Torrance, War Minister Grath sat planning his escape. 22% had voted against cooperation. Millions who shared his belief in Imperial supremacy. Resources to draw upon, networks to activate. The ideological war wasn't over. It was just beginning. But that was a story for another day. Today, the galaxy celebrated what cooperation could accomplish. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. Next week, new opportunities. Next year, who knew what possibilities? The only certainty was that humanity would face it all with the same approach that had brought them from quarantined primitives to galactic peacekeepers. Curiosity over conquest, understanding over domination, friendship over fear. One species at a time, one world at a time, one choice at a time. The galaxy was finally learning what humans had discovered centuries ago. The real measure of civilization wasn't how well you could destroy enemies. It was how effectively you could make enemies unnecessary. And on that measure, humanity was just getting started.